True Detective season 3. Why don't we do a quick temperature check? Where were we at with True Detective season 1? Fan or not a fan, Dave?
Big fan, big fan. It was one of those first shows of it came with 2011, so it was one of those first shows of like the peak TV era. The starting to occupy the post Breaking Bad space. Breaking Bad was still on that time, but first like should really kind of give us like a sense of what TV is like now and really usher in that limited series boom that we're in, right? And I really liked it. I think for a lot of reasons most people liked it, which was uh, movie stars on TV, which was still a little newer back then. McConaughey and Harrelson, of course, leading the way, and coupled with really standout direction from Cary Fukunaga. It just looked really cool. It was acted well, and frankly, Fukunaga and the acting talent, kind of elevated everything else from Pizzolatto. But I think there's been a lot of criticism of the season as well, maybe how it ended, how it treated female characters. I'd recommend Emily Nussbaum's review in the New Yorker for more on that. But overall, I still liked it, and I still think it is pretty effective as a season, a limited series, and as like a mystery crime show and whatnot. I mean, I don't know if we've really talked much about it, but what was your take on season 1 way back in 11?
Yeah, I mean, I love season 1. I agree. I think the second half of the season didn't come together as well as the first part, where it was really just McConaughey and Harrelson getting to sit in a car and just be their weird character. Especially McConaughey got to kind of be his weird self in a lot of ways. Season 2 is just a mess in a lot of ways. I mean, I guess the image I have of season 2 is Vince Vaughn walking through the desert, like half dead with all like, hallucinating. And I feel like that just kind of encapsulates the season. They had a lot of ideas, but also some production issues. And I think with all that talent, I mean, you had Colin Farrell, you had Taylor Kitsch, you had
Rachel McAdams.
Rachel McAdams. Yes. Thank you. The fact that season 2 was such a flop is probably one of the most disappointing TV seasons in recent history.
Yeah, and it's funny because True Detective season 1 was 14, not 11. I don't know why I said 11, but season 2 was Fast Track, came out right after in 2015. And like, remember, like the True Detective season 2 meme was going about casting the show. There's a lot of hype going into season 2, and then without Fukunaga involved to form the visuals, I think Pizzolatto just kind of got lost in his sauce a little bit, because I mean, Taylor Kitsch was a gay character, Rachel McAdams was supposed to be a strong female character, but still kind of didn't totally work, and ultimately the show was just really muddled and kind of lost the charm of season 1. I think season 3, at least for the first 2 episodes that we've seen, really seems to be focusing on what made season 1 appealing and kind of throwing away what season 2 tried to do.
Yeah, and I also think the plot, you kind of talk about getting lost in the sauce, the plot of it, and focusing on this governmental conspiracy with the highways, and there was some very strong overtones of Illuminati and just these like secret groups. It was Rachel McAdams at one point is almost like sold into like a sex trade.
I forgot about the whole plot, to be honest, but I do remember that episode now.
It's an incredibly muddled plot, so there was a lot of issues with it. So season 3 coming out, just premiered this past weekend, dropped the first 2 episodes, starring Mahershala Ali. That was good news. Still, Nick Pizzolatto is behind this, and we saw season 2 flop. We don't have one director kind of coming through to man the helm. It's being doled out piecemeal in part. I mean, it's really 3 people: Jeremy Saulnier, Nick Pizzolatto himself, and Daniel Sackheim, and they're taking different parts of the season for the most part. We were both pretty optimistic for this. How did you feel like the season premiere felt for your expectations of this show?
Yeah, I'm feeling good about this season. I think part of the charm of this season for me was knowing that's only 8 episodes, so there's just less runtime for mistakes, and stringing out a story that doesn't have enough meat on the bone to justify such a long runtime. So I think that's a smart choice for starters, and I mean, we've already seen 2, so there's only 6 more weeks. You know, that's appealing to me for an HBO show. And, you know, this, like I said before, I think it's really getting back to the appeal of season 1. We have 2 investigators working together. They have different experiences and outlooks on life from what we've seen so far. And there's this case that really seems to be consuming them. Obviously, the multiple timelines is a little bit like season 1, but I think they're really going a little further with it this time with 3 distinct timelines: 1980 and 1990 and 2015.
Right.
But yeah, I'm optimistic from what I've seen so far. What was your read?
Yeah, I'm incredibly optimistic about it. I think the timelines is really interesting for two in 2 ways. Not only is it interesting in terms of telling this narrative and kind of looking at how the case develops over time, but then also it's being told from the perspective of Mahershala Ali's character, who Detective Hayes has memory issues. He's either suffering from early Alzheimer's in the 1980s, and then, or was it 1990s, 1980s, and then 2015, he's obviously kind of full blown encapsulated by, it's either Alzheimer's or dementia of some sort. I don't know if they specify at all. But so that leaves some questions in the narrative, and what we're seeing is real or not. I think that's going to kind of lead to some of the gaps that we're going to have to fill in. And it's almost like we kind of relearn pieces of the case with Mahershala, as his character in 2015 is, re-illuminated to these facts that he probably has forgotten based on his illness. I think that's a really interesting spin to the season.
Yeah, and I think they made a distinct choice early on, telling us that what's her name, Julie, the girl, survives. Or at least her prints pop up in the 90s, right?
Right.
And by telling us that, by kind of, quote, spoiling what's going to happen in the 80s timeline, the fact that they did that so early, I think, just expresses confidence in what's we're actually going to see on the 80s timeline. So I like that choice. And speaking to the timelines again, watching them kind of like fold in on each other as Mahershala, wherever he is, starts like talking to the camera from a different time. I think that's the smart choice, nice way to transition settings. I thought that was pretty effective through 2 episodes.
Yep.
And then, yeah, I mean, it just kind of has the vibe, this is, I mean, True Detective season 1 was more deep South, right? More like Southern Gothic or whatever. But this is like the Ozarks, I think, like Fayetteville, Arkansas, I want to say.
Yep.
And that's more, I guess, like rural suburbs is the vibe. And we're clearly in a post-Vietnam era for the 80 timeline. And that's already, we've seen a lot of that already with both Wayne and like the Scrap character, both having like, PTSD as veterans and whatnot. That they're doing that well. And then we've already seen a lot of signs of, a lot of people are talking about like the satanic panic and just kind of societal fears of the time of the 80s. So I think they're really setting the mood there well. I want to see more from the 90 timeline. Again, all we've seen so far is like a few conversations, right? At like desks in like a restaurant or whatever. We haven't seen a lot there. We finally got the revelation about those prints, so we'll see. But I like the 80s vibe for sure. And I mean, not that we need to really say much on that, but the acting is well. I think obviously much to be made about Mahershala's first real lead as a TV actor. He's been on TV forever. Most of us probably know him from House of Cards as Remy Danton, but I really like Stephen Dorff so far as Roland, his partner, just because the juxtaposition of their experiences in a rural white area is already coming out, and their different views and whatnot. And then even like smaller roles, like I really like Karen and Njogo, or how do you say Njogo?
Yep.
As Amelia. Not that we've had a lot of her talking as a character without a relationship to Wayne coming in, but I still think they have good chemistry so far. And then like Scoot McNairy in like a bit role. He's been in everything. That's cool.
Yeah.
And then shout out his son in the 2015 timeline, Wayne's son. Yeah, that's Ray Fisher, who's Cyborg from Justice League. Maybe not the best role, but at least it's something for him.
Well, it seems like there was more conflict to come with that role at the end of episode 2, so he might get a little bit more to play with there. I think Carmen Ejogo has actually been the standout for me. I mean, Mahershala he's a class act actor. I mean, He's going to be the favorite to step on one of our segments for the best supporting actor at the Oscars. He just won at the Globes. He's won an Oscar in the past. He's just a phenomenal actor. So there's no surprises there. I think he plays this role so perfectly, and to play this person at three different parts of their life, I can imagine is also difficult, but at the same time probably helpful to conceptualize who this person was earlier to actually play it and then get to kind of play it as they develop and then get older. uh Amelia, though, seems to be for me the key to this season, because while Mahershala is obviously going to be the one doing the heavy lifting or the majority of it, Amelia seems to be the one who is going to be helping him to really uncover the secrets. And I wonder, and this is a little bit of my own theorizing, I wonder if she's going to be involved in this disappearance or these murders at all in some respect, and how that might not only create family issues in 2015 as Mahershala is kind of missing her, but probably doesn't remember some of the things that happened, but also maybe how that led to pieces of the case interfering in their personal lives and the 1990 timeline. That's just my like early theory on it, but she's so mysterious at this point. I'm like, there's got to be more there than just this.
Yeah, I'm probably gonna lean away from that just because like she writes a true crime book, and like that's some pretty cocky shit to write. True
Hiding
crime
in plain sight, dog.
A crime you committed.
Yeah. Oh well, if OJ did it, that he wrote how he would have done it. So
that's true.
Not that outlandish. I also one thing to kind of point out. You mentioned, the satanic hysteria back in the 70s, and one thing I think is really interesting is it seems like there might be some ties to season 1 within this, that this is happening in the same universe. I don't know if season 2 is going to be tied in. I kind of hope they just throw it by the wayside. But how do you feel about that, about season 1 being maybe like residually tied in here?
Yeah, I mean, thematically, it kind of is already a little connected in terms of the symbolism, iconography of like finding the victims, right? It's the same kind of thing. And whether the Yellow King actually shows up in this season or not, yeah, I think thematically they're connected, and geographically, timeline wise, it all kind of makes sense. I wouldn't be surprised if that came to be, but even if it's just thematically, I think it's a smart decision, like I said.
Yeah, I think if anything, for True Detective to be successful moving forward, there needs to be a bit of continuity, even if it's. I think the anthology format makes a lot of sense, just because these backup actors aren't going to want to play these roles forever. But I think having some kind of world building with it is going to be a huge plus for the show down the line. I wanted to ask you, do you have any early theories on the season? Because this is probably my favorite part about it, is like just kind of trying to figure out the murder ahead of what we know.
Yeah, I'm gonna just go and say that I don't think we've seen the killer / kidnapper yet, because we hadn't seen the killer / kidnapper this early in season 1. We briefly see Glenn Fleshler as the Yellow King and on the tractor, like in episode 3 or 4. Then we don't see him again towards the end. So I wouldn't be surprised if it's being slow play. Like there's some obvious red herrings, like those 3 punk kids from the school. It's not them, I think, and like someone that everyone else wants to blame, like the trash guy collector. It's not gonna be him either, And like the kid that the guy that they kidnap, the cops kidnap and like rough up and think he's suspect, but he's like so obvious. Like I don't think it's him either. So I don't really think we've seen him yet. But I mean, it'd be pretty wild if it's Amelia, like you said.
Well, what do you think about the uncle of the kids?
Yeah, I think this is introduced too early. I think it's
too early.
It's a false flag.
I like it. I like that you're sticking with we haven't seen him yet, and you're probably right. But it's fun to theorize. Any other thoughts around the show or anything that stood out to you?
No, I'm actually happy that the linear ratings, which I mean, linear ratings are kind of irrelevant, but as terms of pure linear ratings, it was right on line with Big Little Lies' premiere and Sharp Objects' premiere from last year. It's down from True Detective season 1 and 2, but ratings as a whole are down since then. So it's not really a good analog, but it's, I wouldn't be surprised if like those other shows, it continues to build up steam throughout the season. And I hope it does, because I think this is occupying a nice time in the calendar, both for HBO, who has a big year coming up, but also for everyone else. There's not a lot of note on at this moment. So I think a lot of people should have time to tune in and probably will.
I'm happy about the show's success, and definitely I think we highly recommend it at this point. So please check it out. Let us know your thoughts. Give us some comments on that YouTube video to spark conversation, and give me your theories. You can hit us up on Twitter at Nowstalgia Pod. Hit me up with your theories there, because I really want to. I want to figure this out before the season shows us what happens.
You sound like a Westworld viewer to me. Give me those theories.
Yeah, but at least I got Mahershala to lean on, and not some poor and uninspired performances on Westworld. But if you want to hear our Westworld thoughts, go back and check that out in our archives. We talked about that a lot.
Video's called Westworld Sucks, if you didn't know.